Hello, my name's Sam. Welcome to my channel. So I know the title says books I love but don't recommend, but in reality it's books I love but wouldn't recommend to just anybody. So someone comes up to me, they say, I'm going on vacation, I need a book to read. 9 times out of 10, I'm not recommending them my favorite book, because my favorite books are books like Kids Spontaneously Combust, Man Turning into a Shark, and whatever the hell Bunny is. And I'd say that is not typically what just any reader would like. They're very niche books. Basically, you're not going to find these books facing out or on the recommendation table when you go to your chain bookstore. So I guess I can start with the books that I just mentioned. Bunny by Mona Awad. A lot of these books also kind of fall into a what the hell did I just read kind of category. And this one I say is kind of based on the Heathers. She's a scholarship student and basically she befriends these girls that call each other bunnies, and they have this smut salon and they do weird things, and it kind of turns into a collective we narration style, and it's very strange, it's very weird. It has a 3.5 on Goodreads, and not everyone's gonna love it. Next, I have Shark Heart by Emily Hebeck. I read this recently, and this book made me sob, and I was very happy because I haven't had a book to make me sob in a while. I've only had 4 before this one, and was desperately looking for another one. This is following a newly married couple, Ren and Lewis is slowly turning into a shark. And you might think that how would that make you cry? It's kind of a weird story to make you cry, but the way it was written, it was so good. It really just pulled on your heartstrings, and the way it's written, I'd say if you don't usually read kind of weirder speculative kind of stories, this one I feel would be a good one to kind of get you into that. It's written kind of in this short vignette kind of style, and I just absolutely loved it. And I think it would be a good one if you wanted to try out kind of a weirder kind of story. The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is another one that I recently read and is probably one of my favorite books of the year. And it's following Lauren, who is basically stuck in this alternate universe time loop where every time a husband goes up into the attic, a new one comes down, and she's just circling through these husbands, and she doesn't really learn any lessons from it. She's just having a time, just living her life, not really trying to change her situation. This is another one that has a really low rating. This has a 3.52, and a lot of the reasons I'm seeing why people don't like it is because it's very repetitive. People are saying that they find it boring and repetitive, but I think if you're going into it not expecting a major takeaway, you're just expecting kind of a silly story, a silly time, then you would enjoy it. Death Valley by Melissa Brodeur. This is another one that kind of has a little bit of a weird writing style. It's kind of stilted, kind of direct to reader. It's a little bit silly. It's basically a story about grief, and it's about this woman who goes into the desert and she finds this big cactus, and she goes into the cactus, and it's basically about her getting lost in the desert. This is another one that has a really low rating. It has a 3.48, and it's kind of meta and confusing. This was one where I went into and I didn't really know where it was going to go, what it was going to talk about, what it was going to be about, and it was very bizarre and kind of weirdly written, but I loved it. We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry. This is following a field hockey team in the 1980s, and they find this journal, and maybe they've sold their souls to the devil, and it's another one kind of similar to Bunny where it turns into this collective we narration style. I know the synopsis makes it sound like it, but this one isn't as bizarre or weird as some of the other ones on this list, so also probably a good jumping off point if you wanted to try something a little less straightforward. Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasalki. This book is just really stupid, and it's about a guy that gets his consciousness trapped in Slack, and it's all told in these Slack messages, and you're just following him trying to get out of the Slack messenger and all the other little conversations in the office. And it was funny and stupid and yeah, a good time, but not something that would come to the top of my mind as something to suggest to somebody. Out There by Kate Folk. This is a short story collection, and all of the stories are speculative, sci-fi, horror, kind of just weird stories. And there's a couple longer ones in here, and then there's some that are literally just 2 or 3 pages. And I just love this so much, but some of the stuff in here is just so bizarro. And my absolute favorite one is called The Bone Ward. And if you're into this kind of thing, like honestly, just pick this up and read The Bone Ward. Sometimes I go to my bookshelf and I just pick this up and I like read like the shortest stories in here. And I have been too nervous to reread The Bone Ward. First of all, because it was just, it was so good, but it left me with like a kind of feeling. And I don't know if I want to experience that again, but I also am so curious to just reread it to feel that again. And yeah, this is one of my all-time favorite short story collections. Middlegame by Shauna Maguire. I don't really have a good reason for this one. It's more of like a straightforward fantasy story, but for some reason it still wouldn't be my number one go-to, even if someone was wanting like a kind of fantasy story, but it's still so good. Sometimes I just put books on this list and I don't really think about them too much. I just hope that it'll come to me when I'm filming, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But all you need to know is this is about twins and the alchemical arts and ascending to godhood, and I don't really know how else to describe it, which could be said for a lot of the books on this list. My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyankon Braithwaite. Basically, this book is on this list because I remember recommending it to someone and they absolutely hated it. And then I thought, maybe I should recommend more like straightforward stories to people. This is about a sister who she thinks her sister is a serial killer, and it's just going through her sister going on dates and then calling her sister because the guy died accidentally, and then the sister coming to her rescue and helping her with all these men that accidentally get killed when she's on dates with them. I really like this book because, again, a lot of the chapters are just really short, like 1 to 2 pages long, and just like written in these like little vignettes, and that tends to just be something that I like and I enjoy, but maybe not for everybody. Next, I have The Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Gran, and this is another book that's kind of like, what is it about? And what the hell did I just read? And it's following, I can't remember if she's like a book dealer or a bookseller, something like that, but she hears about this book of sex magic, and if you do the acts in the book and you say the phrases in the book, you can make a wish or basically get all of your desires granted. I can't remember. I need to reread it. And she goes off with this other person and she's looking for this book, and it's just her trying to find this book and doing some effed up shit. And the ending was really good and everything about it was so good. But again, it has like a 3.7. It just needs its niche audience to find it and love it. Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. This book had really beautiful writing, but really dark and serious subject matter, and that's the main reason why I wouldn't recommend it to just everybody. Basically, it's about a woman committing acts of essay and violence against men, and it's not like a good for her story or like a revenge story. This woman is a terrible person, and I read it via audiobook, and I'd be very interested to read it physically because it had a bunch of different narrators, and I remember having like different sections and like different narration styles, and I'd be really interested just to read it physically. But yeah, it gave me whiplash because the writing was beautiful, but the stuff in the book was not great and horrible. So trigger warnings for that one. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I feel like a lot of books on this list I can't really put into a genre. This one is about this relationship between these two women, and one goes on a work trip in a submarine, and the submarine gets lost for a long period of time. Everyone on the submarine is presumed dead, and then the wife comes back, but she is different. She has changed. She's not herself, and the writing style is very beautiful and written kind of like non-linearly. We're following stuff in the past and stuff that's currently happening, and yeah, I don't really know what I would call it, like kind of like literary horror. I don't want to just call everything like speculative or like weird or magical realism, but that tends to be the type of stuff that I love. Another kind of horror adjacent, like literary horror kind of story. This one has one of the lowest ratings I've seen on Goodreads, and has a 3.1, and that is The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. And this is following like two friends, and one of the friends kind of thinks that the other one is maybe a vampire, and that's the story. And the way that it's told is like the one guy is writing a book, and then the one that he thinks is a vampire is like editing it or finds it and is like writing little notes in it. So it has like read, like if you pick up the physical book, it has chunks where she's like editing it and like putting her little notes. So she'll say, oh, you remember it this way? That's weird because I remember it like this. And we have established that I just like different kind of narratives, and so I found that one really fun, but apparently everyone else hates it. Next, I have My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. This is another one that's kind of like, what the hell did I just read? Who are these people? They're super unhinged. What's going on? And in this one, you're following, I think she's like in her mid or early 20s, and she just wants to be asleep for a whole year. So you're just following her, getting more and more unhinged, waking up, chugging coffees for some reason, going back to bed, throwing out all of her clothes because she doesn't want to do laundry, taking drugs to keep herself asleep, and she just wants to sleep the entire year away. And that's basically it. I think this also has a low rating, 3.63. That checks out. The last two books on this list are satirical stories, the first one being Jameela Green Ruins Everything by Zarka Nawaz. In this one, you're following Jameela Green, and she wants to be a better person. Actually, she doesn't want to be a better person. She wants her book to be a New York Times bestseller. So she goes to the imam at her mosque, and he says, you should do a good deed. So together, her and the imam, Ibrahim, help a homeless person, but then it turns into this like big spiral, and she ends up getting herself in trouble, Ibrahim in trouble, her daughter in trouble, and it's just this big rat race, stupid kind of story. And it's dealing with like darker topics and like serious subjects, but it's making them really satirical and dumb, and I feel like that is why I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. And lastly, I have Glory by Noviolet Bulawayo, and this is inspired by a revolution that happened in Zimbabwe, I think in the 19-somethings, and it's also like kind of like an Animal Farm kind of story because all of the characters are animals. They're horses and goats, and I'm sure there's other animals, but I can only remember the horses and the goats. And oh my god, I listened to the audiobook of this one, and it is one of the best audiobooks I have ever listened to. I want to buy it and reread it, but I also want to just re-listen to it because it was so good. And I guess my reasoning for not widely recommending this one is just, I feel like it's really hit or miss for people having like animals in stories be like the characters, and also maybe just like the satirical nature of it. Again, taking like serious topics, making it satirical, making it maybe less serious by it being animals. I don't know. That would be the reasoning that I can think of after rambling in this video for so long. But yeah, those are all the books right now that I can think of that I absolutely love, but wouldn't recommend to just anybody. If you like kind of speculative, horror adjacent, weird kind of stories, kind of stilted stories, different narration styles, then I think you could enjoy some or all of the books on this list. But thank you for watching if you did, and see you in the next one. Bye. Speculative. Man and and oh, I don't want to say that. Okay, wait. Narrate. Oh my god. Massachusetts? Danvers, wherever Danvers is. Maybe it's Massachusetts. I don't actually know. I don't like that. I don't know what I want to say.